Hello everyone, happy holidays. I'm so excited to start the holiday series. I love this time of year and these prompts are going to be super fun. So I've done 3 minis so far. And the very first one is going to be a toy. I'm still going to do D&D classes, so I've got a cleric. In the 2 random prompts, I've got seasons and body parts, which is going to be summer and calves. Not to state the obvious, summer is going to throw me off a little bit because it's the holidays, but I'm going to make it work. I'm going to go for a teddy bear. I don't like that the snout is really realistic. I wish it was more squished like a teddy bear face, but I couldn't figure out how to make it work, so I'm just going to say this is a more anatomically correct teddy bear. I'm making him short and stout. I'm going to make sure his calves are enlarged, and I think that's all I'm really going to do for that prompt. Sometimes it's hard to treat every prompt equally, but I'm definitely going to lean into the summer and cleric and toy theme. So 3 out of 4, that's pretty good. I think it'd be really funny if he is like a doctor and has all these doctor kits, but he's also on the beach. So I'm going to give him a Hawaiian shirt and swim trunks over his scrubs. And because I really want to lean into the toy theme, I'm giving him a little plastic dinosaur nurse assistant, and they're both running to the rescue. Unintentionally, this ended up being super nostalgic for me. I wanted to be a veterinarian. My childhood years, I'm not. But I had like fake syringes and stethoscopes and band-aids and lots of stuffed animals, and I also had plastic dinosaurs. I think I just ended up pulling straight from my childhood, and it ended up being really cute. I'm making a stethoscope out of leopard tails. The leopard tails are very useful, but they do require a lot of tweaking. If you move one thing wrong, it can really make it look strange. So you have to be really careful about what point you stretch and rotate. And when it's so minute and zoomed in, you might not realize you bent it out of shape until you zoom back out. So it takes a while. Another kit bashing hack is when you want to shrink something down, but it won't go any smaller, attach it to something that can be really small, like a ring, and then shrink the ring, and anything that's attached to it will shrink with it. So that's what I do with the end of his stethoscope. Not only is he coming to the rescue, he's coming to the rescue with a drink. A nice cool drink, like a pina colada. I'm giving him a little umbrella and a fun little straw. And then, just to keep it Christmas holiday theme, the dinosaur is going to be wearing a bow. Maybe he was just given as a present. And then I'm also going to give him a little Santa hat. I wanted them to be running into the ocean, so for the waves I'm using these bone antlers. I think they kind of had like a foam look. It worked, right? I think. And just as a final touch, I'm not sure if I'm in love with this, but I think it's cute overall. I wanted to keep using toys in summer, so I made these fake ice cream cones that you could play with. This is not a typical character for me. I don't usually make cartoonish characters, but I think it's really adorable. I had a lot of fun. I got to not take it so seriously and lean into more plastic looks instead of trying to make everything look real. I love the dinosaur helper. He is so cute. Hero Forge needs to give us more dinosaurs. There needs to be a Stegosaurus. I'm sure someone's made one. The water was tricky. I wanted the sand to look darker, closer to the water, while also having whites and blues that matched the waves. It ended up looking too diluted compared to the rest of the scene, so I went back after I finished this video to brighten it up, and I think I made the right choice. Alright, the first prompt of the holiday season, the toy teddy bear cleric, celebrating Christmas in July, rushing in to save the day with his, I don't know, his thick calves. Alright, next up we've got a caroler. The caroler is going to be a warlock. The two random prompts are furniture and flowers, which is going to be a rug and pinks. I didn't know pinks was a flower. It's not just a color, it's a whole category. Alrighty, we're gonna make her human. The way that I'm going to incorporate the rug is I'm going to have her sit on it and it's going to be flying like a magic carpet. I'm going to use a cape and then just rely on her legs to cover the neck hole. I really couldn't believe that Hero Forge didn't have a bonnet. I feel like that's something that they would have. So I had to make it out of a plate. And then I'm using the spiky flower crown to fill the space, add a fantastical feel, and also incorporate flowers. I'm kit bashing the hair because otherwise it'll poke out the bowl since it's not recognizing that the bowl is working as a hat. And adding some long ponytails on the side to give her more detail. I wanted her to be very bundled up. I made the mistake of posing her without putting her pants on, and both ways is going to require some tweaking, but starting out with a skirt on is significantly easier. So I'm going to take her out of her pose and then I'll put her back and do some adjustments there. Yeah, that was a lot easier. I'm going to shorten the skirt so it doesn't completely obscure the rug. Giving her some cute boots. And she's ready to start caroling. Here's her book. I'm going to do some face posing to make her sing. And then it's time to incorporate the warlock theme by giving her her patron. I suppose that she's summoning them with her singing, and it seems very ambiguous if this is a good relationship or not. As in, I don't know if she's summoning them on purpose or if they're just appearing and she's trying to ignore them. But that leaves some wiggle room for some interesting characterization. I'm putting candles under her so I can have like a realistic light source, and it also adds to a sorcery magical feel. A trick I've learned recently with decals is the more patterns you add, even if you don't want those patterns to be super visible, you get more wiggle room with fabric and colors. And you can just tweak the colors just a little bit in between, like where the reds and oranges are. And you'll get more depth, and you can play with the light a little bit. So if you want, I think, more interesting fabric, add decals, and then keep the colors very close to each other. Or not, go crazy. I want her to be very pale and frostbitten, and I think she's slightly turning into a ghostly figure. See what I mean with the decals? The pattern pretty much disappeared, but it still has a little bit more depth and shadows. I love the classic Christmas colors. They are going to be covered up a little bit, but for now it looks very nice. Time to incorporate those pinks. I think the flowers kind of represent her and her own agency, and the ice that's going to be all over her in the patron, and the ice that's going to be all over her represents the patron. So it's going to be a blend of their powers and how they feed off each other. I like where her facial expression's at too. She looks slightly hypnotized. I'm giving an extra decal on the side of her face where the patron is. How do you feel about the rug being pretty much obscure unless you turn it around? I think it's an interesting reveal as to why she's floating. It's kind of a bummer that you can't see it from the front. Here's the caroler, Warlock, surrounded by pinks, flowers, and sitting on a magical rug. For the next one, I was really hoping I would get this prompt, and I did, and it turned out great, so I'm excited to show it to you. I got the sleigh ride. For the D&D class, it's going to be a ranger, which I don't think I've done yet. I got a random animal and a random weapon, so I got a hare and brass knuckles. Now, I've never taken this approach before where the animal is the main character, but I wanted to do a bunny person and see how that worked. To build the sleigh, I'm pulling out a bunch of random parts that could be the body, the sides, the runners, and seeing what will mesh the best. I need something with slight curve, and I'd also like something that's a little bit embellished so I can add a lot of detail. So I'm mostly focusing on shields and spears. And then I've got the planter box, which is like my go-to furniture table. I've used it for a sink in another video. I'm going to use 2. They're all on top of one main shield, which everything is attached to, so I can easily shrink and move the parts all together. It is super important when you're building something like this to make sure everything is attached or you're going to lose parts. And for the brackets, I'm also pulling out options. I've got a playing card, I've got rifle attachments, I've got antlers to make it more fantastical looking and maybe nod to the ranger being a hunter of some sort. I also think that a rabbit hunting deer or other animals is kind of a cool character. So I'm basically just going to do a trial and error to see what works best. It became pretty clear to me that the rifle attachment, I can't remember which one it was exactly, but that looked the best as long as I added more things in between. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach antlers in between because I really liked how that looked. I don't know if this is the most practical sleigh ever, but I think it looks super cool. The problem with the shields is that they've got arm straps, so I'm going to use a few things to cover that up. For example, I've got the second planter on the floor that's going to block the one in the front of the sleigh, and I've got, I think it's a big scroll that I just enlarged in the back of the sleigh. Shields are also great because you've got a lot more flexibility with shaping. You can make them super thin, you can stretch them out, and that makes them perfect for manipulating furniture or basically using them as building blocks. I've never made something like this, so this was quite a challenge. And now it's time to move on to the character. I'm stretching his face out to give him more of a hare compared to a bunny rabbit look. And I want him to be super gruff. Like, this is a hunter, this is a ranger, he's a tough motherfucker. I'm kit bashing the ears so it'll go through the hood. I really like the buckled, fur-covered look. Unfortunately, the big scarf didn't work, but the new ribbit scarf does the trick. Giving him his brass knuckles. Is it lame if I call him Knuckles? I feel like there's no originality there, but he just looks like a Knuckles, so I might keep it. I know I say this in almost every video, but this might be one of my new favorite minis that I've ever made. I'm also a crazy horse person, so whenever I can use a horse, I'm happy. I love the new draft horses. They work very well in a fantasy setting. I will say the horses are weirdly flexible. Unlike most races and creatures, the horse is very stretchy and it doesn't keep its proportions neat. In that, like, if I move its neck, it'll just keep stretching. It'll just keep pulling out to a way that it looks unnatural. So I actually have to be mindful that I keep the proportions somewhat normal. That being said, I loved posing the horse and putting him in this intense gallop. Unfortunately, because this sleigh used so much kit bashing, I'm going to have to be super mindful of the rest of the kit bashing. I wanted to cover him in sleigh bells, and I think I can only fit in one. As I'm watching this back, I realize the reins make no sense. The horse is pulling this sleigh purely from its mouth. Not correct at all, so if it's killing you in the video, I'm sorry. I did go back and I changed it. I had the reins connect to the bit, and then I had those chains, I moved them down to the harness and connected them to the sleigh itself. So he's actually pulling it with his body and not just his mouth, because that would be animal abuse and physically impossible, probably. I didn't actually end up kit bashing anything besides his ears on the rabbit himself. It felt a little limiting, but I still think like attaching things just to his sides was fine. And I'm going to pretend that most of his supplies, his weaponry, his food, they're all in that giant scroll behind him. And I wanted him to have a fresh kill, so I'm adding a duck on his sleigh. I debated adding a tree, but it overcrowded the scene, so I'm just sticking with these stones. It's time to do some coloring. Disclaimer, unfortunately the recording cut off while I was coloring in the rabbit, so that part gets skipped, but you get to see the sleigh and the horse. I'm going to do a flaxen chestnut for the horse. And the sleigh is going to be green and gold. Again, when I add the final bits of frost, you're hardly going to be able to make out that it was originally green, but it adds more to the scene if it's covered in snow. I also like to think maybe this is a very old, probably worn down sleigh that maybe at a time was nice. Maybe it was passed down through this character's family, but over time, especially with how roughly it's being used, maybe it's gotten a little broken down, maybe a little rusty. This is one of those minis that I wish I had a 3D printer. I would love to own this. This would be a permanent Christmas decoration. Maybe someday when I have the room. Alright, there's the sleigh ride with the Rabbit Ranger with his brass knuckles. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'm definitely going to be making more of this series. I had a blast for all three, so make sure you check back in for a future video.